Did you know? Upon its release in 2006, New Super Mario Bros. Was the first 2D Mario platformer to be made in 14 years. The last 2D platformer in the series was 1992's Super Mario Land 2. The decision to return to the series' 2D roots was in response to the growing number of people who no longer played video games. Thanks partially to the transition to 3D, Mario games have become more and more complex, turning away a large portion of their audience. In 2004, the original Super Mario Bros. Was ported to the Game Boy Advance as part of the classic NES series. The successful port of this game revealed to Nintendo that many people had fond memories of playing Mario, but for one reason or another, no longer played games. In an Iwata-asked interview, Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto recalled, "At the time, I had a sense that the number of people who played games once, but who didn't any longer, was steadily growing. But while I understood this in principle, the reality of the situation hadn't fully struck me. When I heard people talk about this issue at the time of the NES Classic series release, it was really brought home to me." In response to this trend, Miyamoto and fellow Mario developer Takashi Tezuka decided to make a simpler, more accessible 2D game. Their new game went under the working title of Super Mario Bros. DS, but it was eventually turned into New Super Mario Bros. To indicate the refreshed return to the series' core gameplay. The tactic paid off, as New Super Mario Bros. Went on to sell over 30 million copies. It's the best-selling game on the Nintendo DS and one of the best-selling games of all time. New Super Mario Bros. Was also influenced by another series of older Mario games that were ported to the Game Boy Advance. The game was originally conceived as the 5th title in the Super Mario Advance series. The Mario Advance games were released from 2001 to 2003 and took the form of enhanced ports of older games in the series. After the release of Super Mario Advance 4, many fans wondered if there would be a 5th Advance game. With the release of the Nintendo DS, the timing seemed just right to make this new entry. The team decided to go ahead with the project, but make it a brand new title with unique branding, rather than another port. New Super Mario Bros. Incorporates many of the characters and materials from the DS remake of Super Mario 64, and this is an indication when the game started development. In an interview with Game Daily, Tezuka revealed, "When we were preparing Super Mario 64 for the DS, some of the characters in that we decided would already be carried over into the new 2D platformer. So as early as that, the team was already working on New Super Mario Bros. And so they just started pulling assets together, different characters and materials, and basically, over the development period of New Super Mario Bros., they just threw it all together, and that's what the game was." Evidence of the connection between these games can be seen in early trailers. Mario is shown throwing punches as well as performing the side somersault, just as he could in Super Mario 64. It's also noticeable that the Mega Mushroom has an almost identical effect to that of the Super Mushroom in Super Mario 64 DS. Additionally, the question switch from Super Mario 64 DS can be found in New Super Mario Bros. Files. Further evidence of the two games' connections can be found in their minigame collections. Many of the minigames are identical between the two games. Concentration is even called Wrecking Crew in both games, also referencing the NES game of the same name. Pre-release builds of the game also show 3 item slots on the bottom screen, but in the final game there's only 1 slot. This was likely reduced for balancing purposes. If you've played New Super Mario Bros., one feature you'll probably have noticed is the way that the enemies will dance along with the music. Most of the game's soundtrack features a distinctive ba sound. The enemies will react to the sound every time it plays. Goombas will hop, Cheep Cheeps will twirl in the water, and Koopa Troopas will do a little dance. This feature was implemented because the game's sound director, Koji Kondo, wanted the music to be integrated into the gameplay. Kondo reasoned that players would have to react to both the enemy placement and the rhythm of the song. With enough practice, the player would be able to capitalize on the music's rhythm and predict enemy movements. The trailer for the game shown at E3 2005 used music that never appeared anywhere in the game. This music was originally intended to be the overworld theme, but it was scrapped sometime during development, possibly to make room for Kondo's idea. Many other elements were scrapped during the making of the game. It seems that at least 2 of the game's 8 worlds were originally going to have different themes to those found in the final game. Images can be found in the game's files that suggest that World 4 was going to be a prehistoric world, and World 6 was going to be themed around machinery. In the final version, these worlds were adapted into a forest and mountain world respectively, though it's unclear why these changes were made. Large Larger variations of Wiggler and Swooper enemies can be found in the game's files. These larger enemies were tied into an interesting gameplay mechanic, as they were simply normal enemies that had eaten a super mushroom. Eventually though, this idea was also scrapped. The only remnant of this idea left in the game is the Mega Goomba that appears at the boss of World 4. This may have been the inspiration for the act of growing enemies with super mushrooms in Super Mario Maker. After its release, Nintendo became disappointed with the difficulty of New Super Mario Bros., considering it to be too easy. As a result, they focused on striking a balance between accessibility and challenge in the game's sequel, New Super Mario Bros. Wii. They set out to accomplish this by incorporating the Super Guide mode. If a player dies enough times in a level, they'll be given the option to activate the Super Guide, where Luigi will complete the level for the player. This allowed the game to remain accessible to less skilled players, but without compromising its difficulty. New Super Mario Bros. Wii was also the first game in the series to incorporate a cooperative mode, but this feature was originally going to be intended for the New Super Mario Bros. For DS. Early screenshots show both Mario and Luigi helping and hindering one another as they make their way through a desert and a fortress. The feature was eventually scrapped though for unknown reasons, with only the 2-player versus mode being featured in the final game. Don't forget to subscribe to DidYouKnowGaming for more facts and trivia, and if you liked this video, check out some more. Oh, and if you liked my voice, feel free to head over to my channel, Beta64, where I discuss the complete developmental history of various video games from beginning to end. Take my recent video on Star Fox 2, the canceled sequel of the original Star Fox for the SNES. After watching the video, not only will you know about the game's complete development history, but you'll also know about the guy who tried to steal a development cartridge of the game from an electronics show. Plus, you'll also see footage from the other canceled Star Fox games shown at the show, meant to be on the Virtual Boy. This has been Beta64. Thanks for watching.